From the lush, emerald valleys of northern South America to the rolling blue tides of the Caribbean Sea, a revolutionary tide would surge, shaping the destiny of a continent. This is the epic tale of a man whose vision, determination, and spirit would break the shackles of centuries-old oppression, a man revered as El Libertador. This is the story of Simón Bolívar. Simón Bolívar was born into privilege. His life began on July 24, 1783, in Caracas, a vibrant city at the heart of the Spanish colony of Venezuela. The Bolívar family was among the wealthiest and most influential Creole families in the Americas, their fortune built on vast plantations and lucrative gold and copper mines. Yet, for all the comfort and privilege that cradle offered, young Simon's childhood was also shadowed by tragedy. By the age of 9, Simón was orphaned. His father died when he was just 3. His mother, though devoted, succumbed to illness a few years later. The loss of his parents thrust Simón into the care of relatives and tutors, shaping his early years with both affection and a profound sense of solitude. Among those who guided him was Simón Rodriguez, a passionate thinker and educator whose radical ideas on liberty, equality, and justice would ignite the young Bolívar's imagination. As the 18th century gave way to the 19th, winds of change swept across the Atlantic. News of the American Revolution and the French Revolution echoed through the colonies, inspiring new dreams of freedom and self-determination. Bolívar, still a teenager, sailed to Spain, his mind hungry for knowledge and adventure. He traversed Europe, walked the gardens of Versailles, stood in awe at the splendors of Paris, and witnessed firsthand the might and the flaws of empires. In Madrid, he married Maria Teresa Rodríguez del Toro y Aleza, a woman he adored deeply. But happiness was fleeting. Within months of their return to Venezuela, Maria Teresa died of yellow fever. Grief-stricken, Bolívar's heart hardened to the injustices of colonial rule and the fragility of life. On the hills of Rome, Bolívar stood beneath the ruins of the Eternal City, and there he made a fateful vow, a promise that would become legend. He pledged never to rest until South America was free from Spanish domination. When Bolívar returned to Venezuela, the continent was seething with discontent. The Napoleonic invasion of Spain had shaken the old order, exposing the weakness of colonial authority. Creole elites, resentful of their second-class status under Spanish rule, were ready to risk everything for the hope of liberty. In 1810, the people of Caracas declared independence. Bolívar, consumed with the fire of revolution, became one of the movement's most passionate advocates. He traveled to London, seeking British support for the South American cause, and there he met Francisco de Miranda, the precursor of independence. Miranda's own earlier efforts at revolution had ended in failure, but his vision endured in Bolívar. Together, they returned to Venezuela, planting the seeds of insurrection. But dreams of independence would come at a terrible price. The first Venezuelan republic, born of hope, soon faltered under internal divisions, lack of resources, and the unyielding might of royalist forces. As the rebellion crumbled, Bolívar was forced into exile, fleeing first to Curacao, then New Granada, as the Spanish crown reasserted control. Yet adversity only steeled his resolve. In exile, Bolívar began to craft a new strategy, one that would unite not just Venezuela, but all of Spanish America in a common cause. With daring and audacity, Bolívar launched a campaign to retake Venezuela. His admirable campaign of 1813 blazed through the Andes and the valleys of the Orinoco, his army a ragtag band of patriots fueled by the promise of freedom. As Caracas fell to his forces, Bolívar was proclaimed El Libertador, but the road ahead was fraught with peril. The war for independence was a brutal, unforgiving conflict, neighbor against neighbor, friend against friend. The Royalists, determined to stamp out rebellion, unleashed a reign of terror. Bolívar, in response, issued his infamous decree of war to the death, a chilling proclamation that promised no mercy for those loyal to Spain. It was a time of fire and blood, hope, and heartbreak. Once again, the dream of a free Venezuela was crushed under the Spanish counterattack. Bolívar became a fugitive, his forces scattered, his homeland lost. Yet from defeat, Bolívar drew strength. Each setback was a lesson, every betrayal a warning. Exile became his teacher, perseverance his creed. He wandered through the Caribbean, seeking allies, plotting his return. In Haiti, a nation forged by its own revolution, President Alexander Pétion welcomed Bolívar, offering sanctuary and support. Pétion, a champion of liberty, asked for just one thing in return: that Bolívar would abolish slavery in any land he liberated. Armed with new resources and the lessons of bitter experience, Bolívar returned once more to Venezuela. In 1817, he established a new base in the wilds of the Orinoco. There, amid the jungle and rivers, he began to rebuild, organizing a government in exile, assembling a new army, and rallying the people to the cause of independence. The turning point came in 1819, a feat that would become legend. Bolívar conceived a plan as bold as it was perilous: to lead his army across the Andes, to surprise and defeat the royalists in New Granada. It was a march of mythic proportions through freezing winds, torrential rain, and treacherous mountain passes. Men and horses perished, supplies ran low. Yet Bolívar pressed on, refusing to surrender. His unyielding will inspired his followers, and against all odds, they emerged from the mountains to strike a decisive blow at the Battle of Boyaca. The victory at Boyaca was not just a military triumph. It was a turning point in the struggle for South America's independence. The liberation of New Granada, modern-day Colombia, opened the door to a new dream: the unification of the liberated territories into a single nation. In 1819, the Congress of Angostura declared the creation of Gran Colombia, a republic that would unite Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and later Panama under Bolívar's leadership. The liberation campaign pressed onward. Bolívar became a living symbol of hope, his army a beacon for patriots from across the continent. In 1821, he won a decisive victory at the Battle of Carabobo, breaking the back of Spanish rule in Venezuela. 2 years later, his trusted lieutenant, Antonio José de Sucre, triumphed at the Battle of Pichincha, liberating Ecuador. But Bolívar's ambitions stretched even further. In 1824, he launched the Grand Campaign for Peru, the last great stronghold of Spanish power in South America. The Andes became the crucible of freedom. In a brilliant maneuver, Bolívar and Sucre's armies shattered the royalists at Junín and Ayacucho. The chains of colonial rule were finally broken. South America stood free. Simón Bolívar's name echoed from Caracas to Quito, from Bogotá to Lima. He was no longer just a liberator. He was the architect of a new world, but the dream of unity was fragile. The Republic of Gran Colombia, Bolívar's cherished creation, was beset by divisions, rivalries, and jealousies. The forces that had united to defeat Spain began to fracture, regional leaders clashing over power and ideology. Bolívar, a man of vision, found himself mired in political storms. He ruled as a dictator, believing that only strong leadership could preserve the fragile independence he'd won at such a great cost. As president of Gran Colombia, Bolívar struggled to hold the republic together. The ideals that had inspired him, liberty, equality, fraternity, were tested by the realities of politics, ambition, and human frailty. He called for unity, warning that the new nations of South America would fall prey to tyranny or anarchy if they did not stand together. But his pleas went unheard. In 1828, he survived an assassination attempt, a stark reminder that even heroes are not immune to hatred. The last years of Bolívar's life were marked by disillusionment and decline. Betrayed by former allies, reviled by enemies, he watched as Gran Colombia unraveled. One by one, the territories he had united declared independence from each other. The dream was dying. Weakened by illness, his body ravaged by tuberculosis, Bolivar resigned the presidency in 1830. "America is ungovernable," he lamented. "Those who have served the revolution have plowed the sea." On December 17, 1830, Simón Bolívar died in Santa Marta, Colombia, alone, penniless, and heartbroken. Yet Bolivar's legacy would endure. The seeds he planted would grow into nations. The chains he shattered would never again bind his people. To this day, his name is spoken with reverence across South America. Cities, currencies, mountains, and nations bear his name. His vision of a united continent remains an inspiration for all who dream of freedom and justice. But who was Simón Bolívar, truly? To some, he was a romantic idealist, driven by an unquenchable thirst for liberty. To others, a pragmatist ruthless when necessary, willing to embrace dictatorial power to safeguard the revolution. He was both hero and human, courageous yet flawed, visionary yet vulnerable. In every victory, there was a cost. In every triumph, a shadow. The world Bolivar left behind was forever changed. The empires of Europe would never again hold sway over the mountains and valleys of South America. Bolivar's revolution lit the torch of independence, not just for his own lands, but for oppressed peoples everywhere. His life is a testament to the power of vision, the cost of freedom, and the enduring struggle to build a better world. In the plazas of Caracas, in the mountains of Colombia, in the highlands of Peru and Bolivia, his statue stands sentinel, silent witnesses to an age of transformation. And in the hearts of millions, Simón Bolívar lives on, a symbol of hope, a beacon of courage, an eternal liberator. His words echo through the centuries. "If nature opposes us, we shall fight against her and make her obey." Against all odds, Bolivar dared to dream of liberty, and in doing so, he changed the destiny of a continent. As dawn breaks over the Andes and sunlight bathes the land Bolivar once marched, his legacy endures, not just in stone and memory, but in the living spirit of freedom. The liberator's journey reminds us that even in the darkest hours, the flame of hope can ignite a revolution. It is up to each generation to keep that flame burning, to strive for unity, and to remember the man who refused to rest until his people were free. This was the life of Simón Bolívar, son of Venezuela, father of nations, liberator of a continent.